You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast. We are waiting just a minute for everyone to engage the live stream. Remember, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite platform.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. We are live on X and any number of other platforms. For all the live streamers that are checking us out, we wait just a moment for the live stream to establish on all the different platforms. With me is Shamanisis. Shaman, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm psyched for the weekend, psyched for this conversation. Is it juicy?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. That's for sure. We're usually not on Friday night, so if you're new to the program, like I said, we just wait a moment for the live stream to establish, and then we hit it. And I think now's a good time. So just give me a moment. We'll pause and start the podcast. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked out the program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. We often do interview co-host type situations where we talk about current events and politics. And my co-host for many, many of those is right here, Shamanisis. She's live with me Thursday nights. Shaman, how are you?
I'm amazing, Billy. Having a great summer.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. The big news, this is Friday night, June 28th. We are live 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And many, many platforms. Obviously, live on X is kind of where we're home. We're also live on Facebook and actually about a half a dozen other different places. And then you can check out the Billy Dees podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Sometime later, we record that separately as we're on the air here. And it's available on all the major podcasting platforms. You can find the Billy Dees podcast anywhere. Okay. Big news of the last 24 hours has been the debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And also, we should probably mention that RFK Jr. did the simulcast, and we're gonna talk about that as well, because that's going to factor in to what's happening. Let me start off by saying that I kind of think this is important for me to say. I've been saying the last 6 months, and I say I know Shaman has agreed with me a lot of times, but I've gotten a lot of negativity, mostly from Democrats, who say that I'm feeding into a conspiracy theory when I talked about how I didn't believe Joe Biden was up to running again. I got a lot of people saying that I was feeding into a conspiracy theory that was designed to discredit his presidency. I had a lot of people tell me that he was better than ever. Joe Scarborough 3 months ago said this is the best version of Joe Biden ever. Of course, he was talking something different today.
Funny how that happened.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. And I'm not saying I take no pleasure in being, and I'm not even saying I'm right yet. I'm gonna, as we talk about this today, I'll qualify that. But I take no pleasure in this. I have a lot of respect for the office of presidency. I have a lot of respect for Joe Biden as a human being. And this isn't something where I'm saying, hey, guess what? I told you this all along. I take absolutely no pleasure in this. You know, quite frankly, I believe that Joe Biden could live any amount of time in the years to come, much longer and better, not being president. So as a human being, if I was his son or brother or whoever, and a member of his family, and I could say, hey, man, you've done your work. You know, you've been in here 40 or 50 years. It's time to relax and let somebody else worry about all this crap. So with that being said, it's obvious there is a problem. And a lot of the people who are living in false realities have snapped around, but others have not. I still have noticed a lot of things online where he just had a bad night.
Oh,
and then, yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, last year when we first started doing these episodes, we had a really great conversation where we laid this out. I mean, there was no
Mhm.
hesitation. We weren't guessing. I remember even saying that I was concerned about him because, I'm intuitive and I had this intuitive just understanding. I could see his energy had faded dramatically.
Yeah.
And I got the impression that something was like, his energy was being sort of pinched, if you will, and we talked about it, and we both said that we were concerned about his ability to even not only be present, to make it. We talked about the fact that he couldn't make it through the presidential election. And so the fact that the television screens were filled with Democrats today talking about how stunned, how shocked, how sad, how this is all recent, or they've just now realized his sudden decline, and it's like sudden. It was
Yeah.
obvious a couple of years ago that he probably shouldn't run again, but it became incredibly obvious 6 months ago that he was in severe, cognitive decline, and at this point, it's now embarrassing, but I honestly, I don't think a lot of this is an accident.
Yeah.
It was a
We're
big
gonna
power
talk
move
about
that's
Go
backfired
ahead.
on them.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that as well.
Mhm.
But before I get to that, let me also cover Donald Trump. Most of the people that I kind of followed in the last 24 hours have stated this. There's been a few exceptions. Megan Kelly, for example, who I really, really like, she gave Trump kind of a glowing review, I would say.
Mhm.
I don't buy that either. Not that in comparison with Joe Biden last night, obviously Trump looked much better. He looked much more solid on his feet, and the whole 9 yards. However, he did not do what I would have wanted him to do. I would have kind of ignored Biden. I kind of would have spoke to the American public. I would have been a little bit more congenial, a little bit better with smiling, and it really got to be juvenile.
Oh, yeah.
You're the worst president ever. No, you are. You're the worst president ever. No, you are. I mean, this was like listening to a debate in the fourth grade.
Yeah. Well,
It-
this
it-
was this was such a strange debate. I mean,
yeah,
everything about the way it was arranged, it wasn't done in any way. There wasn't an audience. The journalists weren't there. The mics were being pinched. There were just so many rules that
yeah,
don't normally involve themselves. And I think and I think Trump was trying to restrain him. I mean, I'm being honest. I don't think
yeah.
it was his best performance. It certainly wasn't his worst by any means. I thought he
No.
held up just fine, but I also think that he showed a lot of class and restraint. Yeah, it got childish, but he could have been vicious.
How
And
many
he
times?
and he wasn't, and I think it's because he knows that Joe's not fully there. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
he
Oh,
just
he
holds
knows.
back
Yeah,
for that.
yeah. He holds back because he doesn't want to look, horrible. But
Yeah.
I got to tell you, how many times can you use the phrase "in the history of"? You know, I took a dump today, and it was the biggest dump in the history
In the
of dumps.
history of
Yeah, and that here again, very juvenile. I did think Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, who I really don't, I'm not a big fan of either one of them. I stated that last night.
Mhm.
However, I feel that they did a good job. I
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job in terms of they asked balanced questions. The only thing they did not do is they really didn't pursue either one of them with follow-ups that aggressively. But quite frankly, I don't think they could, because if they would have gone after Biden, they would have gone that had have gone after Trump or the other way around, and Biden just was not up to it.
No, he wasn't, and frankly, that whole setup was about no one will ever convince me that the entire setup for CNN wasn't bent in Biden's favor to
Oh,
begin with.
sure. Yeah.
Uh, the whole thing, that was what the whole thing was about, basically, was let's prop him up as much as possible. But, that's a whole conversation about, the fact that the debates the first time a presidential debate's ever taken place before the big
Yeah.
conventions. I
And
think that's very telling.
it's very telling. We're gonna get into that in just a
Yeah.
moment. As far as reactions go, I
I
do
was
have
just about to ask you about that.
I do have a little montage here, and I added some a vaudeville semblance to it. Um,
Oh, you're having
I
fun.
got to tell you, if you listen to the podcast last night, if you want to go back in the playlist and get it, I kind of said that I didn't think neither one of them were going to hit it out of the park. I kind of felt that Biden was going to read, obviously pre-programmed. They programmed into him for a whole week they had him practicing and practicing. And there's those who say they overprogrammed him. They just crammed him with too much stuff and he got confused. But anyway, I kind of felt that he was going to, spout off these prepared answers, and he would do okay. When he walked out, I got to be honest with you, I was shocked. I really was, and then not. And I'm here again. I'm not trying to be funny here, but
No,
but I was
sad.
I was nervous. And anyhow, little montage here of some of the reactions from around the internet. Right here. Here we go. I like the way Rachel Maddow there when Joy Reid says it was approaching panic. She goes,
Oh,
hmm.
constipation.
Yeah, yeah. She goes, hmm.
She's such a liar. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
speak it. She's been it almost feels scammy. There's times when she's talking when I'm like, does she actually believe the crap she says?
Yeah.
But I have to say, this was one of the, and I am so sorry that Joe Biden, it is elder abuse. It really is. And I think at this point, he's just a puppet. He has been for years, which is something I want to touch on before we close out. But today was one of the best days in social media I mean, people put out all the stops. I saw some of the funniest things on these two candidates. And I think it was the best thing that could have happened because a lot of people were actually quite shocked, which still amazes me.
Yeah.
Because, 6 months ago, we were saying that he shouldn't be, and they needed to take him off the ticket and pick Kennedy. And now they don't have Kennedy as an option, which is a shame because it would have given them their best candidate. And I don't think Gavin Newsom is it. But watching the talking heads, the liberal ones today, acting as though they're just now finding out that Joe Biden can't last 4 years, it's like they can't be that delusional. It feels like they're all in on the same thing, which is let's grab the power seat while we can, and then we'll deal with fuddy-duddy Joe when we have to, and poor Kamala will just kick her to the side. I mean, that's been the plan the whole time. They can't have not known, and he's been on decline for a couple of years now.
In the sake of being very thorough, and before we get in, there's a couple of reactions here that I want to discuss with you, and we're going to get into some of the Kennedy stuff and some of the other stuff that the Democrats might have been planning all along. But moving forward, I do want to give, for the sake of being fair, Biden today in North Carolina, for whatever reason, seemed much better. Here we go.
I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. Well, I know. Folks, I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know right from wrong. And I know how to do this job. I know how to get things done. And I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
Now, I'm not sure how good he is at speaking the truth, but that was well spoken. That was well spoken.
That you know what though, Billy, I'm gonna say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm super intuitive with people, and I'm a pattern. I recognize patterns. It's one of the reasons why I'm so good at predicting things. And he's not natural there. That is not the Joe Biden that I knew before the last couple of years when he was getting a little help. I think they tried something different today because they were like, "Oh, something's got to give."
Yeah. So now that we kind of covered that, let's get into this, just a little deeper here. Let's start with Van Jones. And a lot of my conservative friends don't like him, but I like Van Jones. I really and truly feel that this is an honest man and he speaks from the heart. And this was Van Jones after the debate.
I just want to speak from my heart. I love that guy. That's a good man. He loves his country. He's doing the best that he can. But he had a test to meet tonight to restore confidence of the country and of the base, and he failed to do that. And I think there's a lot of people who are going to want to see him consider taking a different course now. We're still far from our convention, and there is time for this party to figure out a different way forward if he will allow us to do that. But that was not what we needed from Joe Biden, and it's personally painful for a lot of people. It's not just panic, it's pain for what we saw tonight.
I would agree with that. It was very painful to watch another human being struggle like that.
But they knew. See, Billy, we're all being really nice about this. I call bullshit. The Democrats knew. They've been coaching him for a week. He's been clearly on something for months now. They knew, and I really believe that there's a level of elder abuse involved here. I really do.
Yeah,
I don't
I would
care
agree with
if
that.
people like hearing that. And I find it very hard to believe. And Van Jones does seem like an honest person. He really does, but I don't believe that he's just now finding out that Joe Biden's not okay. Either that or they're all just that delusional.
Yeah, well, here again, I'm not so sure that, when we have a tendency to group people together. All the Republicans did this. All the Democrats did this.
Mhm.
I have a feeling that this was largely a very inner circle of very powerful Democrats who have been manipulating this. And a lot of people say Jill Biden has been complicit as well. I'm going to play one more clip, and then we're going to delve into some of the things you're talking about. This is on Good Morning America, and this was what was said.
John, no debate inside the political world about how this went last night.
No, this was a disaster for Joe Biden because of what Rick just said. He needed a win. Instead, he had a performance that has top Democrats questioning whether Joe Biden has what it takes to beat Donald Trump. One Democratic member of Congress who has been a strong Biden supporter texted me in the middle of the debate a typical response. He said, "I am in a state of shock. He is diminished to an extent that has become undeniable." The big question, the big discussion now that's happening, at least privately among Democratic officials, is whether or not it is possible to replace Joe Biden as the nominee.
In the end, it's really up to him, his wife, maybe his sister.
It's up to him, and whether or not his wife and sister or anybody else close to him can convince him. There is no way to force him out that I can see anyway, although trust me, people are looking at this, unless he voluntarily decides that he is going to step down and say the convention should choose another candidate.
Okay, let's break this down a little bit. He can voluntarily back out of this, just like LBJ did in 1968. He very famously said, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have the exact words, but I shall not seek nor shall I accept my party's nomination. Now, he did it earlier in the cycle. There would be nothing stopping Joe Biden from doing that. And you had mentioned that there is a talk, we'll put it in quotation marks, happening with him, and I'm sure that is going to come up. Now, whether or not he takes it or not is another thing entirely. But there is somewhat of a conspiracy theory here in that the Democrats, their inner circle, realized too late in the nomination, in the preliminary election cycle, that there was a problem, and they scheduled this debate for early so that they would be justified in quote unquote having the talk, or even getting into the declaring him incompetent and removing him is another thing entirely. I don't believe that's going to happen. And here's why. If they can talk him out of just not running again, okay, the field is wide open in terms of who they want to put in there, in terms of how the party works with the convention and all this other stuff. If he resigns as president, Kamala Harris automatically becomes president of the United States. So I would say that that's probably something that they want to avoid if they can.
Yeah.
Which is probably, I hate to say this, this sounds like a terrible thing to say. But, if he would die anytime soon, if he would die in his sleep anytime soon, I would really want an independent autopsy on that son of a bitch. Okay, because, I mean,
Oh my God. So true.
I'm just being honest here.
No, that's the way we have to think now, because there's been some sketchy stuff going on for years now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about, JFK and was that a conspiracy? And I'm not going to get into all that. I've always been very skeptical about an organized conspiracy in regard to JFK, because if the government really wanted to take out a president, they wouldn't have to do it in such a spectacular fashion. Getting a lone wolf like Oswald involved, who was very unpredictable, shooting the president in front of hundreds of thousands of people. That's not that's that. There's way too much that can go wrong with that plan. There's better ways to take out a president in terms of if you really are a conspiracy theorist. And one of the ways to do it is.
I disagree with you here.
What's that? Go
I
ahead.
disagree. I actually disagree with you. I did a 60s history class in college,
Go
and I
ahead.
studied this whole case, and you're assuming that they had a lot of time to plan. You're assuming that there were lots of opportunities, and there were some things going on, particularly very correlating very closely to some things that have been going on recently that have affected TikTok. That made getting rid of him in that moment, with just enough time to plan, that would have been the best opportunity, because they needed him wide open so that they could take a shot and make sure they were accurate. I mean, it's much more difficult, and today it's a lot different because we have cameras everywhere. We know so much more. I don't know. When I studied it, I started out with my eyes rolled, like I can't believe we're going to actually study the Warren Commission. Anyway, the Warren, I did an interview with a writer who's written 30 books, and 6 of them involved Kennedy, and he got contacted by a man who worked for one of the men on the Warren Commission, a very highly respected man, who contacted him last year to tell him that 2 of the men on the Warren Commission, which wasn't that many men, wanted to write dissenting opinions, and they were shut down.
Yeah.
And he gave him proof of it, so there's something sketchy going on there.
Yeah, without going into too, I will agree that that's a complex investigation, and whether or not somebody put Oswald up to it, or at least knew he was going to do it and did nothing about it, is another thing entirely. But anyway, moving on here, what I'm getting at is there's easier ways to make somebody go away. I mean, if you read about some of these things that some of these agencies have now. I read about one the other day where they have this a little arrow that's made of ice, and it's very toxic, and they shoot that into you, and it just feels like a little pinprick. You don't think much about it, but then it starts to dissolve, and the next thing you know, this person is dead. These are things that the government has access to, or just making somebody go to sleep or get involved in an accident. That's where I just don't believe that shooting somebody in some spectacular fashion is the most dependable way to do it, if that's what you want to do in terms of things going wrong. But with that being said, I don't want to go too far down that kind of conspiracy
rabbit hole.
And really, I think they want him to finish out his term because they don't want to deal with Kamala as president.
Yeah, they're going to ask him to just step down from the race and say that he wants to finish out strong and focus on transitioning.
Yeah, again, that would be the best way to go. He could really improve his legacy by saying, "Hey, look, man, I've done this for 50 years, and I'm going to, help the next person come in. We're going to come in strong. I'm going to be there during the inauguration, and I'm going to give you the best send off I can." That would be the way to do it. Now, he could legitimately pass away in the next few months, which is something that that could happen.
It could. That's the shocking part about the whole thing.
Well, anybody could. I mean, it seems like it's happening to younger people anymore now. Well, with all these things going on with chronic illness and some of the things that have gone on with some of these vaccine stories, so anybody can go at any time. But obviously, somebody at that age in that condition, it doesn't
under that stress.
Yeah, and that's here again. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need that at this point in his life. I do feel that the Democrats kind of set him up in by showing, okay, this is why we have to make a move. And if that is true, I can't imagine being that kind of a person. I can't imagine being that kind of a person to do that. I mean, I would much rather have to have an honest heart to heart sit down with him, try to go over with him. Maybe that happened and they didn't get anywhere, and it could still be the case. He could still refuse. You don't know. Which would probably be the next step would be doing something at the convention, and that would be a mess for the Democrats because you would have to have a delegate battle. And here again, I don't even know how that even works. And here again, we're in uncharted territory. So that's probably my guess is there's still a chance that Biden could still be the nominee. However, I'm going to say now it's increasingly likely that something is going to happen. With that being said, who would it be?
Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom, that's what you're leaning towards.
Which I think is a disaster. I think anybody, frankly, they choose is going to be a disaster. But Gavin Newsom is so out of touch, and but he's so high up there because isn't Nancy Pelosi?
Yeah,
And
I don't know what
she's worth like $200 million, which is amazing for a politician who grew up poor.
Yeah.
She's one of the richest, most powerful women in politics, and that's her little nephew.
Okay.
Or something like that.
I don't know if they're going to do Gavin Newsom, they didn't need to do it soon because they need to rebrand him a little bit, and the convention can really do that.
Oh yeah, but I got an email today from him. I sign up for all of them because I want to see what they're all saying, and I got an email from him today, and I was already thinking it would be him. And when I got that email, I was like, oh, he's raising his hand.
Yeah. So with that being said, I kind of feel Gavin Newsom, because of the fact that there's so many problems in California, he has such negative numbers that they would really have to rebrand him. But I'll tell you where he would excel. Getting back to Trump's performance last night, it was not stellar.
No.
And Gavin Newsom, like him or not, and I'm in the not camp there, like him or not, he is a very skilled politician. He is an excellent debater. And if he would have went up with a Trump that was on the stage last night, he'd have had him for lunch.
Honestly, I think that has a lot to. It's like playing tennis. Honestly, I think that has a lot to do with Trump's performance. It was like playing tennis with somebody who doesn't know how to, use a racket.
I can tell you, a young Gavin Newsom who's very physically fit, a dashing person, and he can spill out numbers like anybody's business. I'll tell you what he's really good at is per capita comparisons. Per capita. That's what he's always saying, per capita. And the fact of the matter is that I think the public has really begun to accept per capita comparisons as very valid and Loctite, and that's not true at all. Per capita comparisons are number comparisons. They're not situational ones. I don't care what the per capita comparison would be from a place in Antarctica versus the Sahara Desert, but I got to tell you, there's more factors involved than numbers. Okay.
Well, politicians are so skilled at using bullshit. That sounds really good.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it'll be Newsom. I mean, can you name anybody else in their party that's been pushed forward?
I'm going to say, unfortunately, Gavin Newsom would probably be, and I'm hearing Pete Buttigieg as his vice president.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that has come up, and I don't know if this is wishful thinking on the part of a lot of Democrats, but I've heard Michelle Obama. Now I've heard that come up a number of times.
That's wishful thinking. I don't think she wants. I've heard her say she has no desire, and she feels like a person who does it should have a desire. And her husband wanted to be. I did see an interesting. I know, my Billy. You're like, would she say on the topic? But this was so interesting. I saw a tape, and of course, these days those things can be faked, but it looked really real. Of Obama talking about how he would take on a third, if he could be the puppeteer and talk through the line to whoever was the president. And I was like, oh, that's rather interesting because it does feel a lot like that's what's been happening for the last 4 years.
Actually, it kind of rolls into what I was about to say about Michelle Obama. this country has had a history of recycling the same people, which I don't think is a good idea over the past 30
Yeah.
years. We've recycled the Bushes, we've recycled the Clintons, and by default, Joe Biden is a recycle of the Obama administration.
Hmm.
So we have 12 years, 8 years Obama, 4 years Biden. And now to say, okay, here's another one. Um, let's go with Michelle Obama. I kind of feel that would work against her, and a lot of the negatives that the current Democrats have she would bring along with her. I
Hmm.
think that Gavin Newsom, even though he is somebody I do not like, he would at least be a fresh face.
Yeah.
And that is something that the Democrats should have. And I did a podcast here a couple months ago, probably one of my biggest ones, where I talk about the mistakes that the Democrats made leading up over the last 4 years. They've had 4 years to get a dynamic candidate, and they haven't done it. So, with that being said, I Gavin Newsom would be a fresh face. Michelle
Do you
Obama,
do
I
you
don't
know
know.
what? You just made me realize. So there's this. I've always had this suspicion that Obama was running Joe Biden,
Hmm.
and he was his vice president, and he's still heavily involved. You see him popping up here and there, and then he made that comment about being the puppeteer of someone.
Yeah,
He would do a third one if he didn't have to actually be the president. He could just puppet him.
yeah.
Um, but that would explain why they weren't rushing to replace him.
That could be. I
Yeah,
don't know,
yeah.
but I can tell you that's all the more reason here again that would be what 16 years of an
Mhm.
Obama legacy if a Michelle Obama would run and
Yeah.
win. So I just kind of think that that's too much. And the other person that has come up, um, one of the people that I follow on social media has thrown this out there. I don't know where this came from, but Nikki Haley is another one that has come up. I feel
Mm.
that she would be interesting. What's more likely is what we're going to get into next. Let's go here. I want to talk about President. I should say presidential candidate RFK Jr. This was a conversation that happened very recently, and I'm going to play this for you right now.
I'm just saying, Bob, look, you're a known quantity. Everybody knows that you have your own mind, but people know your family. They know what your background is. Nobody's got better Democratic bona fides than you do. And they just pushed you out because of how toxic the party system has become. But now the guy they pushed you out for is in free fall. So, I'm just throwing it out there because it would really solve their problems and yours at the same time.
Yeah, I cannot predict what they're going to do. I mean, I'm going to.
Would you be open to
we're gonna be
talking
on
to
the
them?
ballot
If they
in
reached out to you, Bobby, would you be talking to them?
Of course, I would. Of course, I would talk to them. It would put me on the ballot with nobody trying to get me off.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be on the ballot at this point in every state by mid-July. But it would be. But I'm gonna have the the DNC suing me in every state, so to get me back off of it again. So I would talk to somebody.
Yeah, what that means there, it means it's a possibility. It does not mean it's likely. So I'm going to qualify that.
Mhm.
There's no question Kennedy's name is synonymous with Democrats. I do feel that he is still a fresh face because
Yeah.
his uncle and his father so many years ago. This is somebody that definitely has views that are much different than his family. As a matter of fact, his family came out against him for Biden here very strongly in the last few months. I wonder what they're saying now.
I have a feeling they
Um,
must be panicking a little bit.
yes. And I do believe that he has a lot of fresh things to say. Now, he had the simultaneous debate where he was on stage and he answered the same questions and he did it in real time last night. He had millions of people tune into that. With that being said, I think he was very well spoken.
Mhm.
I sampled that. He was very well spoken, and he is saying things and he doesn't talk about, well, those two guys are the worst presidents in the history of the world, in the history of the universe. He's not talking like that. He's not talking like he's in grade school. He is very well spoken. He cites references, he cites studies for everything that he talks about. He's talking about things that these other two guys just simply aren't, whether it be the connection with food and mental health and chronic illness that we have in this country. He is very much against a lot of the spending of that and our wild involvements all over the world.
Yeah.
So he's got a lot of good things. He was on. I know he's been branded as anti-vax, and that's not exactly true either. Once you get
Yeah.
into him, he was anti the experiment that they rolled out as a vaccine.
Yeah. They weren't
Um,
vaccines at the end of the day. Doesn't care. It doesn't matter what people can call them anti-vax, but they weren't vaccines. So how can he be
yeah,
anti-vax?
and he's got a lot of history with the pharmaceutical companies
Yeah.
and keeping them in line. He's
Hmm.
got a long history of getting involved with legal causes. He's an attorney, for the environment, for the little person, and this is a pretty dynamic guy.
Yeah, he
And I'll
is.
tell you, physically fit. Oh my God, he's 70 years old and he's jacked. He is absolutely jacked. I don't. There's that thing he did. He went viral where he wore a
Jumping
pair
up
of
the hill.
jeans and no shirt and was doing all those push-ups and all this. And he's just absolutely jacked. I mean, he's got the body of a 45-year-old in shape dude.
Hmm.
So, yeah, and I like him. And here again, there's a lot that can happen between now and then. One of the things that can happen is if the Democrats do get a rock star in there that we don't anticipate at this time. Let's presume the worst in this conspiracy theory that you've suggested that the Democrats knew this all the time. They rolled him out there to show how bad he looks. Let's presume that they have a rock star. I mean, a real rock star. Okay. And they're just waiting for the right time to debut this person that we don't know about.
They did. It was Kennedy, and they crapped all over him, which is
Yes.
another reason why I think there's something about the whole trying to keep Biden in there. Is it speaks to the people who wanted to stay in power
Yeah.
as the puppeteers of Biden. Because they didn't groom anybody else. They didn't push for it, even though 6 months ago we were talking about the situation. I think they really just wanted to get him through the race and keep that secured. And they were like, "We'll just deal with it if it all falls apart." And now they've pissed off Kennedy and sent him packing. It would be that would actually be the smartest move the Democrats could make. But we've talked about this for months now.
Yeah. I will say this. When him and the Democrats parted ways, his image, through no fault of his own, was not as good as it is now. He has really overcome a lot of those labels that were placed on him.
Hmm.
And I really think that bodes well for what we're talking about, him taking over the ticket. And the other thing is that here again, you have a fresh, dynamic individual. It, I feel that would be a good fit. But
Yeah.
getting back to what we were saying earlier, if they do have a rock star that we don't know about, that would really put RFK Jr.'s uh, campaign in a different situation, and to put Trump in a different situation. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. I think that we have the next week or two are going to be critical. If they're going to make a move, the Democrats, I mean, they're going to have to do it quickly.
Mhm.
Because if this turns out into some debacle at the convention, I that would be harder for the Democrats to overcome as somebody who is forced in there.
I think they timed this debate as a run through to see if Biden was going to be able to sell it, and to some degree set him up, because they were like, if he can't make it through, we're going to get rid of him while we can. Because we even said that, we were like, if they're going to do that, if they're going to switch out Biden, they need to do it before the big convention. And so I would be shocked if Biden doesn't make an announcement in the next week.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. The other thing that I haven't, as we've gone there, and I was prepping for this show about the debate, I really haven't followed what the latest gossip is on Trump's VP pick, but that's another potential hot marker that could also affect things. Typically, my experience with vice presidential candidates is they don't really make or break the ticket. The rule is, for your vice president, is do no harm. You don't want to pick
Yeah.
somebody that's going to bring you down. I think in this particular situation, it's an exception. If he gets a rock star as vice president, that could be really interesting as well. Here again,
Which may be why they haven't announced it.
yeah, I kind of
They've been waiting to see what's going to happen with Biden.
yeah, I think with all the turmoil now with this debate, they're kind of waiting for this to settle a little bit. I've heard different names. I've heard Vivek Ramaswamy is one of them. Another debater that, I mean, this guy's really sharp, man.
He's
quick on
good.
his
Yeah,
feet.
he's good.
So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting time. I do feel, let me end with this here again, getting back to the humanitarian side of this. I don't like the horrible things that have been said about Biden. This is a human being, and I don't particularly like him, but he is a human being. He is the president of the United States. I respect the office, and we have an image as Americans to uphold right now. And we haven't gotten into this too much today. Maybe we'll cover it some more on our next episode. But the world is watching in disbelief at what is happening here. I mean, this is unprecedented for the United States of America. I mean, we've had some presidents come and go. Some of them we liked, some of them we didn't. But this is just nuts. Like Jon Stewart says, this can't be real life. It just can't. So,
and then really, is this the best we can do? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. There's so many people in this country, some brilliant people, and I've known them myself. I've worked alongside them. I mean, these are people that are just absolutely brilliant. I can't believe that in the big realm of things that these two guys are the best we got. And here again, not personal. Biden is he's past his prime.
Yeah.
And Trump is right close to being there. I think he could still hold his own for another 4 years. He did okay in the debates last night. The only reason he killed it in the debates last night was he was up against, I don't know what that was, with Biden. He was not brilliant. He didn't say anything brilliant other than I'm the greatest. I'm the best at this. I did this in the history of the world, in the history of the universe. In the history of running water, there was nothing substantive that either one of these guys said. The substance was with RFK. That's where the substance was.
Well, he's been the substance since this whole thing started. That was the thing that's so tragic about the way the Democrats treated him. And honestly, the fact that he was a Kennedy and they treated him that way told me that the power dynamics had become incredibly skewed in recent years.
And here again, I'm not trying to sell RFK either. In terms of a marketing, and this is kind of what Shaman and I, if you're new to the program here, being that we're on Friday night, we approach this from public relations, from politics, the workings of politics, branding, all that other stuff. We're not partisan. And RFK still has some issues. If he moves to the Democratic Party, let's say, for example, the base is not going to like him. He's not wacko enough for that left crazy. He's not,
Well, I have to say, timing wise, it would be interesting because with Fauci having gone up, and I mean, the tide really has turned, and there have been some serious admissions that actually really work in his favor, and that could be spun very smartly.
Yeah, and the right doesn't like Kennedy because he's not conservative enough. And in this day and age, Ronald Reagan wouldn't qualify as a conservative. He wouldn't.
What hurts Kennedy is that he's intelligent, and the fact that he actually is paying attention to what he believes to be true and not what the party's telling him to think is the reason why neither party really loves him.
Yep. So he's got some sellable problems himself. Yeah. So I mean, whether I like him or not, as it stands right now, the pendulum is swinging in the favor of Trump, but it's very, very delicate. It's not going to take too much to get it to swing the other way. A lot depends on what the Democrats do, and I think that's going to be a big one. And I can't believe they haven't had a plan for a while. And the other thing is going to be Trump. And is Trump going to be his own worst enemy? Is he going to pick a good VP? And of course, there's a lot of intangibles that could happen in the news. I mean, some sort of a catastrophic event happening in the world, some black swan event where, a nuclear bomb goes off somewhere or something like that. These are all things that are horrible but they could happen. So some massive terror attack or some massive military maneuver somewhere in the world. These are all things that are unpredictable. And we're just going to have to wait and see. It's going to be a crazy ride. And I just hope that after the election, the dust settles. I can't imagine that happening. I can't imagine any solution where a lot of this division is going to go away. It's going to be a scary year. It's going to be a scary election. So with that being said, before I let you go, before I let the audience, before I say goodbye, Shamanisis, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on my websites, soultechfoundation.org and shamanisis.com, where you can see links to all of my social media. I spend a lot of time on X and on TikTok, and all of those are under @Shamanisis. So thank you, Billy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can find the Billy Dees podcast anywhere podcasts are found. If you're new to the program here, being that we're live on Friday night, you can find the Billy Dees podcast on all the major platforms. We are on all of them. And social media presence, X at Billy Dees is kind of like my social media home, although I'm on all of them. The Billy Dees podcast you can find on Facebook. I have a very small community of followers there, but we go into more detail with stuff, behind the scenes stuff and stuff like that on the Facebook page. The huge listens where all the action is happening for me anyway has been on X. And of course, our listenership on all the podcast platforms has been very good. We're going on 10 years now. So, yeah, we've been a presence on the major carriers for a long time. And it's been a privilege to talk to a lot of you and get to know some of you out there. It's been really, really wonderful. So next week, we have the July 4th thing. We're still kind of figuring out what we're going to do. We're typically, Shaman and I go live on Thursday nights. So we're not sure what we're going to do with the holiday next week, but the long and the short of it is, with all that's happening right now, there's going to be a lot of programming coming from Shaman and I on the Thursday night programs. So follow us both at Shamanisis and at Billy Dees on X. Shaman, thank you very much for sitting in tonight. It's been wonderful as always.
Thank you, Billy, for having me. And you guys have an amazing, amazing weekend.
Yes, absolutely. Have an amazing, safe weekend, and we will talk to you again very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Billy Dees podcast. Follow Billy Dees on X at Billy Dees for updates about the program.